Alright, I'll try to slow down the video. When that bolt finally came out, you can see the axle sort of snap back. The other control arm went right in now. So yeah, even this bolt now fits perfect. So, yeah, I'm going to get these other control arms in. I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my new front shock absorbers in. Get the retaining clips installed for the leaf spring, the coil springs. And that's pretty much everything in the front lift. I think one other thing I wanted to point out, with bushing suspension, right, rubber bushings, you should tighten the bolts down that mount them when you're at ride height. The reason is there's not a lot of play or twist in a rubber bushing, right? So you want this to be at ride height when you cinch everything down. That way the flex that you're getting out of that bushing is minimal. It's at a relaxed state when you're sitting at ride height, and then depending on which way you go, you're getting that resistance of the bushing. Otherwise, if you tighten it when it's all the way down and then the axle comes up 4 inches, you're going to twist that bushing that far, and it's going to want to tear. You'll just fatigue the bushing far sooner than you would if you set it at ride height. So, we're putting a lift on this thing. There's no reason I shouldn't be able to fit underneath this a little bit better. And especially with an impact gun, I'm not sitting there with wrenches. Although if you are, you should have plenty of room to do that. But I'm just going to put the nuts and everything on loose right now. When I have the weight of the vehicle on here, I'm going to come back and I'm going to tighten these all down. Okay, so I was just thinking I should probably install the sway bar drop brackets before I get the Jeep down on the ground, try to get the axle more positioned where it needs to be. So this comes with new relocation brackets. Use the factory bolts to hold the bracket to the chassis, and then it comes with hardware, new 7/16 hardware to attach the sway bar bushings to the brackets. The instructions are a little vague here. Really just shows a photo of the bracket with sway bar attached. It doesn't really say the orientation, which way it goes. It just says photo 5 shows the position of the bracket. So I'm going to go by what looks like the angle there, and it's sort of facing forward. I'm going to do the same, the angle sort of facing forward, and then I'm going to try to keep the open end facing in with the flat side facing out. I don't know, it's just maybe a matter of preference for me. I don't even know if that's going to work, but we're going to try it out here. So let me see if I can get this sway bar in. Alright, so the bushings that were on the front sway bar were pretty worn. These are just a rubber bushing. So since I'm doing all this right now, I'm going to just replace them. You can see even the end links, the bushings there were pretty crushed. Even the lower portions, I mean, look at that, you can see it's split. A lot of times what happens is you get rust in here, and then the rust expands out, and everything binds up. So I'm going to replace all that. But before I put on the new mount bushings, I'm going to clean this up with a little Scotch-Brite, wipe it up with brake clean, clean up this mounting surface as well. a little wire brush action, just dry it all up. And then I'm going to grease all these bushings, so I don't have to worry about squeaks or stiffness in the bar. And then I'm going to reinstall the sway bar. I'm going to do it to both sides there. Brackets look fine. I'm just going to clean them out a little bit, and then we should be able to reinstall all this. Alright, so these are split bushings. It just makes it easier to get them in on the bar. It doesn't matter which direction you put them. Once everything's clamped together, they're clamped pretty tight. But you want to put some kind of lubricant in the portion where it rides on the bar itself. You definitely don't need it on the outside. This isn't moving at all. Same thing, a little lubricant on here, though these don't move as much as this is. This is actually the pivot point. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little grease on here. It's just a pet peeve of mine. I usually face the split towards the rear of the car. Again, these things are going to get pinched so tight, nothing's going to get in there anyway. This is one other quick thing I should point out. When I was looking to purchase these bushings, they listed probably about 4 or 5 different size sway bars. I have a vernier caliper that does metric and inches, and I just measured the bar diameter, and then in the description it said what diameter bar the bushing was for. I don't remember offhand. I can measure it quick. So those of you who don't know, this is what they refer to as a vernier caliper. This one's digital, so it makes it a little easier to read quickly than to have to read a vernier scale. If you're not sure what that is, look it up. It's a pretty interesting little device. But I have mine set in metric, so I'll just measure the diameter of the bar. I lock it tight here. This one comes out to 25.89, so it's roughly 26 millimeters. So that's the size bushing I got for this bar. It was the closest one available to this size diameter. So it's a nice little handy tool to keep in the toolbox. Quality ones are very expensive. But you can get cheap versions of these plastic ones, stuff like that, for stuff that's not critical. If you're not doing some serious machine work, you don't really need an expensive one. But they are a useful tool to keep around. Alright guys, so I just put the front wheels on temporarily so I can tighten the upper shock mounts, and I wanted to get some ride height load on this thing so I can tighten things like the control arm bolts while it's at ride height. So pretty much I left everything loose, including the sway bar mount, because I want to position it so this thing is sort of in a what's the word I'm looking for, parallel line with the shock and the coil spring, because it is quite a bit of an adjustment in both the bracket and, well, I guess it's just a bracket because there's slots on the top, slots on the bottom. I can move this thing wherever I want it to go. So everything's loose, including the bushings up here, the lower bushings on it. So I'm going to crawl underneath while this thing is sitting basically at ride height. I say basically because I don't have the rear wheels on because I don't have the rear kit in yet, but I want to call the front done. So there might be, actually no, there's no weight on the front or the back. It's literally sitting down on its own weight right now. So I'm going to try to set up the camera for you guys, and I'm going to crawl underneath here and tighten this up. Just real quick, I took a measurement And I'll take another measurement afterwards. But, you know, these are still the stock tires. But now we're measuring roughly 34 and an eighth. Call it 34, I don't know. So it's a pretty good, jump. You know, it doesn't look much right now because of the stock tires. But with those lower control arms, you know, it extended the control arm about ½ an inch. Now the wheel is still centered in the wheel arch. If you didn't do that, or if you just kept the stock lower control arms, the wheel would be further back in the wheel opening. So again, those are two things that you have to be mindful of when you're doing a lift, especially on a solid axle. The track bar, which is going to move the axle left to right, so driver's side to passenger side. And then the control arms, you know, as you go up, the axle's going to want to swing down, which is also in another arc, which is going to swing it towards the rear. If you don't correct that by making those arms longer, your wheel is going to, or your tire is going to hit the back of the fender. So if you go with bigger tires, bigger wheels, you're going to have interference issues. So on this kit, at least, for only a couple dollars more, I don't remember exactly, I want to say maybe it was like $50 or $60 more for the lower control arms. That corrects all of that. Granted, this is only a 3-inch lift. When you go higher than 3 inches, you run into even more issues. Brake line lengths, stuff like steering geometry, because then you have to drop pitman arms so you can get your steering geometry right again. Otherwise, you have issues of bump steer. If you don't know what bump steer is, it pretty much is you hit a bump with the left front, say, and the truck will dart left or right because it's actually pulling on the tie rod because the steering links are not straight. You know, they're on an angle like this. So it actually is sort of pulling it. I know I'm not really showing this well. Look it up. Look up bump steer. There's lots of pictures on the internet. You'll see what it is. And again, while you're doing the lift, make sure you do these things so you can correct it the right way so you have a lifted vehicle that's not only safe, but it rides good. You know, if you were only going to bomb through the woods in this thing or go mudding, you know, you're going low speeds, maybe you don't really care so much, but you know, this thing's going to be mostly a show lifted thing, mild off-road. They're not going to do anything crazy, so it's going to be street driven a lot. So I want to make sure that this thing rides as close to stock as I can, being a lifted vehicle. All right, so I'm going to climb underneath now. I'm going to tighten all those bushings, like I said, that are at ride height, which is where they should be tightened. Alright guys, so the front end is complete. I tightened all the bushings and everything down when it was at ride height, lower control arms especially, on both sides. Shocks are tight, retaining bracket for the spring is on. I adjusted the sway bar bracket and where the mount goes so that this bar, I don't know if you can really see, is as perpendicular with the coil spring and the shock as I can get it. I spoke to the customer. They want to hold off on the track bar for now. So what I did was made a couple of measurements to see which way the axle was from, well, we're looking at the front end, so that's driver's side, passenger side. And I know I had almost a 1/4 inch more on the driver's side than the passenger side. So what I did was I extrapolated that measurement from the factory hole and then added an 1/8 inch to get it over as much as I could. And just because I didn't want to worry about it, I used a piece of brass as a backing on both sides, and I filled in the hole so that there was a little more strength back here, and then I drilled myself a new hole for the track bar. So now the axle is centered in the vehicle where it should be. One other thing to note, since I did lower the vehicle and I didn't add a drop pitman arm, the steering wheel is off-centered. Luckily, this has an adjustable, I don't remember if this is called the drag link or what, but regardless, loosened it up, centered the steering wheel, did a quick string alignment, really rough because I'm going to have this thing aligned after I'm all done, but just got the steering wheel as straight as I could, so when they drive out of here they're not, you know, questioning why the steering wheel is, you know, 90 degrees out. It'll make it a little bit better, a little easier for the alignment shop to get everything where it needs to be. But that's pretty much it. I just want to let you guys know how the front went. You know, everything is nice and tight now. And from there, I'm going to move to the rear.